So today I'm very excited because we're starting this new series to share knowledge, because we all know that in this business, knowledge is key. And I am very excited because we have a very special guest. His name is Angelo Letimier. Angelo is a C-suite versatile bank executive who's held various managerial positions in MCB. MCB, for those who don't know Mauritius very well, is the key player in the payments industry. So Angelo held diverse managerial roles in MCB, where he positioned the first Forex dealing room. He's expanded MCB's regional footprint in Madagascar, but also in Paris as a representative office in 1990. But what most intrigues me is that in 1988, he introduced the first credit card in Mauritius. So welcome, Angelo. So Angelo, I'd like to ask you, you were the first innovator at that time, if I can put it that way. You introduced credit cards in Mauritius, not only in MCB, but in Mauritius. Yes. So how did the market behave with that very innovative product?
It's quite an interesting history because at the time I started cards, nobody had a clue what it was. My own experience was I discovered credit cards in 1985 when I made a trip to the US.
Oh, nice.
And I was going to take traveler's checks. Somebody in London tell me, you don't go to the US anymore with traveler's check, you must have a credit card. And I had no clue what it was. He sponsored me to be given an access card from Lloyds Bank. That's how I traveled to the US and started discovering what you can do with a credit card. Even in 1985, you could not rent a car. You could not have a hotel booking if you did not have a card.
Wow.
Petrol station were unattended, and unless you had a card, you could not have petrol. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. Mm-hmm. So when I came back in Mauritius, I said, well, we need to start accepting cards. I was not even on my drawing board to start issuing cards because I saw that the tourists coming to Mauritius, being a tourist destination, were going to come with this instrument in their wallet. It was a big exercise at the time because in terms of card system, they were only running on mainframes.
Oh, wow.
There were no other systems than mainframes. And it was quite difficult to have access to what is today common, even systems that run on PCs today. So we had to start looking at how to accommodate it. And fortunately, we had excellent relationship at the time with Standard Bank of South Africa. So I started getting close to Standard Bank. I spent a lot of time at Standard Bank in their card division because they were the only African issuer of the time. And that's how I learned all the business about credit card.
How about the market and the customer adoption? Did it follow through?
Not really. It was a big exercise to start with convincing even the management of the bank at the time that credit card was the future for Mauritius. And we had to start not only accepting credit card, but thinking of moving to credit card for our customer base. And you are too young to know about this, but at that time, when people were shopping, they were still using what they call carnet de boutique, where you listed all your buying with a shop. Normally your shop was your next door shop, and you pay at the end of the month. A shop that was giving the credit to the customer. And people say they were used to that. So introducing a credit card in the context of that time was quite difficult. So fortunately, there were some people that believe in it, and I was given the green light to start considering developing a system to issue credit card. And it took us 2.5 years of development.
Wow.
On a mainframe.
That's quite impressive, I have to say. So I'll jump to the time where you came, because at some stage you left the bank to go to MasterCard. I'm going to go more on that later on. But I'd like to jump to the time when you came back to MCB to restructure the cards business. And so you must have done something right, because even though it was innovative and you had to convince people, etc., today MCB is the brand, the African brand that you look up to in terms of cards business.
In credit card, at the time it was developed in Mauritius, there were two types of cards. There was the English type, which is a real credit card with a revolving credit attached to it. And there was the more or less deferred debit card, which is a French system that was in place with carte bancaire in France. The difference is that in France, the card was developed to replace the check, whereas in the US and the UK, it was developed as an instrument of payment completely independent from the banking system or from the bank account of the customer. In France, you cannot have a card if you don't have a bank account. Whereas in UK, you can have a card without a bank account. So that's
Different
a big
strategy.
difference.
Yeah.
We went the English and US type. So we started straight ahead with a credit card, which is an instrument of payment that was given with a line of credit independent from the banking world. So it was a new concept, completely new concept. It took a lot of time and a lot of education to get it in the market.
Okay.
In fact, the marketing budget at the time was pure education, nothing else.
Yeah. So the thing is that if today you could go back and change something, what would you change?
Well, today the situation is quite different because technology has evolved. At the time when you use your card, some transaction, if it was done outside the country, took 45 days, 60 days to come to your account. Today, you put a card on the table, your account is being debited instantly. So it's a different world.
Completely.
And that, I would say, happened in a span of 30 years. The technology of transferring data has moved so fast that even the internet and the Wi-Fi and all of that did not exist at the time. I think there is no financial institution, I will not speak of bank today because even financial institutions today are involving credit card and cards, whatever. It's a must-have instrument in the portfolio of services to the customer. You cannot think of opening a bank or have an institution or considering doing lending of money if you don't have a card transaction that goes with it. Now, the card can be physical. Today, it has evolved. It can be also virtual because you can have it in your phone, not be without the plastic. So it's a different world, but it's a must.
Okay.
It's a must.
It's interesting that you're saying that it's a must. We've had a few players, they've been incentivized by associations. And so they jump into the cards business. But then at the end, let's say 2 years afterwards, they're like, this is not a profitable business because they don't really understand what they're doing. So what would you give as advice to these, players who don't really understand, like what should they do to become profitable, to ensure that if they go in there, that they become profitable?
The card has developed so quickly that today it is an instrument which allows institutions to have the customers do transactions remotely from coming to the bank or their counter, which is a very big cost. Servicing a customer at the desk is very expensive. If the customer uses an ATM, it's less expensive. Now, if the customer makes a payment directly to the merchant, it's even less expensive. And it's a volumetric business. The more transaction you put on, the more cheaper it comes for the transaction. So for most institutions going in the business, for them to understand the concept of what a card can bring to them. At the time when I started in the card industry, it was said to me that the plastic that you put in a wallet is something that the customer keeps close to his heart because that's where he keeps his wallet. You can't say it anymore today. But they keep it on the phone, which is something also that they don't
close to their heart
again. So it's always there. And it makes your bank available to the customer away from the bank. And that's very important today. Even if you transact on the internet shopping, you need that instrument to be able to do it.
Yeah. But the thing is that what's interesting as well is that with the evolution, with time, with the adoption, etc., we've also seen the rise of fraud and, other actors that have other motives, not very good ones. And so regulators have become more and more strict, right? So according to you, in terms of rules and regulations and staying relevant, how does all this fit into the picture?
For any bank getting in the industry of payment, it's better to be close to the I would call the Association of Card, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, or whatever. The card business, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Diners Club are more, that's a bread and butter. They are ahead of and they have in place quite a lot of rules and regulation, which you abide by, protects the banks more. And many countries, especially if you're talking to Africa, you have exchange control.
Yep.
But it was the case when I started card in Mauritius in 1985 and 88. It took me a lot of discussion with the central bank to convince that that was the way forward.
And it paid off.
It paid off. And at the time, if I recall, I think the travel allowance per person, annual travel allowance, was something like £250.
Okay.
But the sterling had a different value as today.
True.
But still, it was very many. But once the central bank started understanding it, we started allowing businessmen to have their travel allowance on their card, and that's where the business started developing.
So we've talked about financial institutions, central banks, etc., but we also hear lots of fintechs coming into the industry. So these fintechs sometimes don't really fit into, rules and regulations. They don't really tick into boxes. And yet they come and they're able to get into the ecosystem. So some banks are very wary because they don't have the same constraints as banks do, but others see the fact that fintechs are available on the market as opportunities to tap into unbanked populations. What are your thoughts about it?
Glad that you mentioned the word unbank, because this is what Africa is all about. The big democratization of the banking system. The only place I know it has worked is Kenya, because the government conceived the fact that the card was a way to push that forward. And the other places, because of the low illiteracy rate, I would say, it's very difficult to conceive that it would work. South Africa is a good example. They've been in the card industry much longer than any other country in Africa, but there's still a huge amount of people that don't have a card. The unbanked population is still big. Even the telephone industries, MTNs of the world and all that, they started getting into that sphere, because that's where everybody has got a phone in their pocket. So that's another way of tapping into that market.
True.
So there's plenty of scope, I think, in Africa to move in that direction. Any institution starting the business today in a bank, they shouldn't even think of having a checkbook, because it's obsolete today.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is that we're talking about unbanked populations. So there's the convention of Maya with financial inclusion. And there's more and more RFPs and initiatives where the World Bank is actually financing projects for financial inclusion. So definitely we shall see how all this will...
The problem is that the cost of getting involved in the payment industry, be it cards or virtual cards or whatnot, is quite high at the start. Unless you go in through processes, which is available today, but having your own system in-house and maintaining that system, it's a arm and a leg in terms of cost. And if you don't have the volume that goes with it, you're very quickly dead, because the cost keeps going up and you don't get the revenue on the side. So using processes is, I think, for Africa today, the quick way to it. And that's where I think ICPS will get into that race, because they provide the system that makes it easy for banks to get into the payment industry.
Open platform technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which 40 years ago, when I started, did not exist, I tell you. It took us 2.5 years to develop a system.
Yeah, the mainframe. Fortunately, there's APIs now. In 10 years' time, not sure what things are going to look like.
Very quickly.
It moves very quickly. In 10 years' time, since I just mentioned it, how do you see the future?
You think that I have a crystal ball? I think what happens today in 10 years would some things that used to take 30 years today happens in a year anywhere in the world, because things move very fast. There is a lot of things developed by new fintechs. I think you need to always have an eye on what's going on. Even in Mauritius, if you see all the different payment which is going around, be it Blinks, Pop, whatever, whatsoever, there are plenty of good things in it. You can't say, forget about them. We do our own way.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is that if you consider all these new payment means or channels or instruments, what future do you think that credit cards have in the future? Are they still going to?
Plenty, because probably the card will not be as physical as it is.
Yeah.
But it has plenty of scope for it, because the technology that goes with the card is the same which is applied on every payment system today.
Yeah, so the concept
The
remains the
concept
same.
is there, it will evolve
Yeah.
in terms of technology and adapting new features, Wi-Fi, internet, things move faster. So I think there's plenty of scope. Behavior customers are very much influenced by what's going on in the market, in what the shopper provide, where you get discount. The advantage of the card system is that you have a huge database. If you know what to look for, you can predict what your customer wants to do. For example, you want to target, let's say, women between 18 and 40 for a specific product. Through your database, you can do that, because you've got all the information there. You know the pattern of your customer. You can do it even specifically for a region, because you know that that person lives there. If you want to target somebody in a city, you can do it. So there's plenty of scope.
So understanding your customers and, checking their behavior, the spending patterns and all that is also very important.
Yeah, you can mail specifically or send a message. You don't even use mail today. You send a message more or less, or an SMS specifically to your customer in a specific area about a special promotion. There is plenty of scope, which is still untapped. Even in a sophisticated market like Mauritius, I think there is plenty of scope to do that.
I think that's an insight that a lot of people are going to keep in mind for their next budget.
Well, first you need to be curious. That's how I learned. You need to be curious. You can't stay focused on what you are just doing. You must know what your neighbor is doing and other things. So it's very important to try to keep abreast of development, especially now. Today, it's even faster.
Yeah, it's
even
everywhere.
Faster. At the time, I was lucky enough to travel quite a lot to go to CART, meetings where you can see all the vendors of the world showing what's going on.
Events.
Yeah. Conferences. I learned a lot through that. Today, you can have access even easier through internet, which did not exist at the time. So there's plenty of ways of staying abreast of development. That's the advice I would give to anybody who wants to move in that area.
Be curious, keep broadening your knowledge, and keep in touch with.
You never stop learning.
Yeah.
You never stop learning.
True.
Even today, I'm still learning. Try and find the right people to run the business. That's one. Consider the business as a P&L, which is very important, because you can't only spend, you must know how much return you're getting in front of it. That's one of the things that I've always been doing in my career. Look at the P&L. You spend, but you must make sure that you get the revenue in front. And get close to the associations, because that's where I think the know-how and the rules and regulations are best.
So I'd like to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.